The church was packed. The air was heavy with tears, whispers, and the smell of white lilies. My husband, Chris, was lying in a polished wooden coffin at the front, surrounded by candles. I sat quietly in the first row, clutching a handkerchief so tightly it nearly tore. Everyone thought he was gone forever. But then, in the middle of my grief, my phone buzzed inside my purse. With trembling hands, I pulled it out and saw a new message. My eyes widened, my heart froze. It read, "I am still alive. Don't trust your daughter-in-law." The phone nearly slipped from my hands. I gasped so loudly that people turned their heads toward me. My daughter-in-law, Evelyn, sitting just a few seats away, gave me a sharp, curious look. Was this a cruel prank? Or was Chris truly alive? And why was Evelyn mentioned? I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. Hello everyone. Welcome to today's video. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. You never know. You might get a shout out in our next upload. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy stories that twist your heart and keep you on edge. Now, let's dive into this shocking tale. I should tell you a bit about myself first. My name is Paula. I am 71 years old, born and raised in Ohio. I've always believed in kindness and empathy because life is too short to be cruel. My husband Chris and I lived in a modest home, surrounded by our children and grandchildren. Chris wasn't a perfect man, no one is, but he was my partner for more than 40 years. He loved fishing on weekends, drinking coffee on the porch, and reading old mystery novels by the fireplace. People said we were an example of a lasting marriage in a world where love fades too fast. Our daughter-in-law, Evelyn, however, was different. She had married our son killed 10 years ago, and from the very beginning, I sensed something cold about her. She was polite on the surface, always smiling for pictures, but her eyes never matched her smile. I tried to show her kindness. I would cook meals for her when she was sick, babysit the kids when she needed time, and even help her with bills when she and Kill were struggling. But Evelyn never seemed grateful. She often whispered with Kill behind closed doors, and when I entered the room, the conversation would suddenly stop. Still, I told myself, Paula, don't judge. Life is hard, and maybe she just has her own burdens to carry. Then Chris got sick. At first, it was small things. He tired easily, lost his appetite, and complained of sharp pains in his chest. The doctor said it was heart trouble. We did everything we could. I cooked healthy meals, took him to appointments, and prayed every night. But his health dropped fast, too fast. And then one cold November morning, I woke up and found him lifeless in bed. I screamed so loudly that neighbors rushed over. The ambulance came, but it was too late. Losing him shattered me. My rock, my companion, gone just like that. I felt my whole world had crumbled. Kill and Evelyn helped arrange the funeral, but something about Evelyn's behavior struck me. She seemed almost calm. She shed tears, yes, but they looked forced, like an actress on a stage. Now here I was at the funeral, drowning in grief, when I received that message. Chris alive? Don't trust Evelyn. I wanted to jump from my seat, to scream, to run out of the church and find the truth. But my hand shook too hard, my legs felt weak. I had to keep my face straight. Nobody else could know, not yet. The service ended, and people lined up to give their condolences. I hugged Beatrice, my childhood friend who had driven all the way from Michigan. "Stay strong, Paula," she whispered. "Chris is watching over you." Her words stabbed my heart because I wasn't sure if he was watching from above or somewhere else entirely. As I was leaving, Evelyn grabbed my arm firmly. Her nails dug into my skin. She leaned close and whispered with a smile, "Don't worry, Mom. Everything will be fine now." Her words chilled me to the bone. That night, when I returned home, I couldn't sleep. The message haunted me. I read it again and again. Was it really Chris? Or some cruel trick? My phone number wasn't public, and hardly anyone used it except family. Whoever sent it knew me too well. I decided to reply. My hands trembled as I typed back. "Where are you? Prove it's really you." Seconds later, another message arrived. "Look under the loose floorboard in our bedroom closet." I nearly dropped the phone. That was something only Chris would know. Years ago, he had hidden a small metal box there with old letters and wore medals. Not even Kill or Evelyn knew about it. With my heart pounding, I crept to the closet, pushed the shoes aside, and lifted the floorboard. The box was still there, but this time there was something new inside, something that would change everything. When I opened it, inside the box, I found something that made my breath hitch. There were a few things I recognized. Chris's old army medals, a faded photo of us from our honeymoon in Florida, and some letters he had written me years ago. But beneath those, folded neatly inside a plastic bag, was a sealed envelope with my name written on it, in Chris's handwriting. I froze. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold the envelope. Slowly, I opened it. Inside was a short note. Paula, if anything ever happens to me suddenly, do not trust Evelyn. She is not who she pretends to be. There are things you must know. Stay strong. I love you. Chris. My heart pounded. My husband had written this before his death? Was he warning me from beyond the grave? Or was he still alive and had planned this? I pressed the note to my chest, tears running down my cheeks. Chris, what have you gotten yourself into? The next morning, I tried to act normal. Kill came by to check on me, and Evelyn followed behind him, carrying a basket of fruit. She placed it on the kitchen counter and gave me a too-sweet smile. Thought you could use some company, Mom, she said. I forced a smile. Thank you, Evelyn. That's kind. She sat across from me, crossing her legs. You know, with Chris gone, things are going to change. But don't worry. I'll make sure you're taken care of. Her words sounded comforting, but the way she said them felt like a threat. I noticed the way her eyes scanned my house, as if she were measuring everything inside. Kill, bless his heart, seemed oblivious. He patted my shoulder gently. We'll always be here for you, Mom. I wanted to believe him, but the letter in my pocket burned like fire against my skin. Later that evening, I visited my neighbor Beatrice. She had always been my rock in hard times, someone who listened without judgment. We sat on her porch, sipping tea as the autumn leaves blew across the yard. "Bea," I whispered, handing her the letter. "Look at this." She read it carefully, then looked up, her face pale. "Paula, this changes everything. If Chris suspected Evelyn, then something's very wrong." "I don't know what to believe," I said, tears welling in my eyes. "But I got a message yesterday at the funeral. It said he's alive." Beatrice gasped. "Alive? But how?" "I don't know. But he told me to check the box. And look, he was right." Beatrice put her hand over mine. "You need to be careful. If Evelyn is involved in something, she'll try to keep it hidden. Promise me you won't confront her yet." I nodded. "I promise." For a few days, I tried to live quietly. I cooked small meals, cleaned the house, and pretended to be the grieving widow everyone expected. But inside, my mind was racing. Every time Evelyn visited, I watched her carefully, noticing how she lingered in Chris's study or how she asked strange questions about our bank accounts. Then, one night, I received another message. "Meet me at the old fishing cabin by the lake tomorrow. Come alone. Tell no one." My chest tightened. The fishing cabin. That place was special to Chris. We used to spend weekends there when we were younger. If this was truly him, then I had to go. But fear not at me. What if it was a trap? What if someone wanted to lure me out there? I hardly slept that night, turning the phone over and over in my hands. By morning, I made my decision. I drove to the cabin, my heart pounding with every mile. The road was empty. The trees swayed in the chilly wind, and the lake glistened under the cloudy sky. When I reached the cabin, everything looked just as I remembered: old wooden boards, a rusty fishing boat tied to the dock, and the smell of pine in the air. I stepped inside, calling softly, "Chris? Chris, are you here?" The cabin was quiet. Too quiet. Suddenly, the floor creaked behind me. I spun around, my heart jumping. And there, standing in the doorway, was not Chris, but Evelyn. Her face was cold, her smile sharper than a knife. "Well," she said slowly, "I was wondering when you'd..." My knees nearly buckled. Evelyn stood in the doorway of the fishing cabin, like she had been waiting for me all along. The dim light from outside cast shadows across her face, making her look colder than I'd ever seen her. "Evelyn," I whispered, clutching my purse tightly against me. What are you doing here? She stepped inside, shutting the door with a slow creak. Funny, she said softly. I was about to ask you the same thing. This place is sentimental, isn't it? Chris used to love it here. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with something sharp and dangerous. I forced myself to stay still, to hide the panic rising in my chest. I just needed space, I stammered. To think. To be alone. Evelyn's smile widened, but it wasn't kind. It was the smile of someone who already knew more than she should. Alone? Oh, Paula, you're never really alone, are you? People are always watching. My heart thudded, so loudly I thought she could hear it. Was she the one sending those messages? Was she playing a cruel game? But before I could speak again, Evelyn leaned close, her breath brushing my ear. Chris had secrets, you know, and sometimes secrets get people killed. I pulled back, my body trembling. What do you mean by that? She tilted her head, her smile fading into something more sinister. You'll find out soon enough. But let me give you a little advice. Mom, stop digging. It's safer for everyone. She turned sharply and left the cabin, slamming the door behind her. I stood frozen in the silence, my heart racing, my hands clutching the letter from Chris inside my pocket. When I finally got back to my car, my mind spun. Was Evelyn threatening me? Did she know about the messages? Or worse, was she behind them, trying to scare me into silence? Back at home, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone in front of me. Hours passed, and then another message came through. She was there, wasn't she? Don't let her fool you. Trust no one. Go to the attic tonight. I nearly dropped the phone again. Whoever was sending these messages knew exactly what had just happened. The attic? I hadn't been up there in years. Dust, boxes of old clothes, Christmas decorations, that's all I expected to find. But if Chris, or whoever was behind this, wanted me to go there, then maybe another piece of the puzzle was waiting. That evening, with the house quiet, I pulled down the attic ladder and slowly climbed up. My flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing cobwebs and stacks of cardboard boxes. I searched for nearly an hour, sweating, my heart hammering. Then I saw it, a wooden chest shoved against the far wall. Something about it looked different, like it had been moved recently. I dragged it into the light, knelt down, and slowly opened it. Inside, there were piles of documents, bank statements, photographs, and letters I didn't recognize. But right on top was something that made my blood run cold. It was a photo of Chris, alive. He was standing in what looked like a hospital room, thinner than I remembered, with tubes attached to his arms. And next to him was Evelyn, smiling at the flashlight shook in my trembling hand as I stared at the photograph. My knees buckled, and I sank to the dusty attic floor, the picture clutched so tightly I was afraid I might crumple it. Chris, my husband, thin, pale, but alive. His eyes in the picture looked tired, but they were his. My Chris. And there, standing right beside him, her hand resting on the rail of his hospital bed, was Evelyn. Her smile was sharp, almost triumphant. Not the fake sweet grin she gave at family dinners, not the polite mask she wore in public. This was different. It looked like victory. A sob escaped my throat, and I covered my mouth with my free hand. Tears stung my eyes, mixing with the dust in the air. My whole body shook. What did this mean? Why was Evelyn there? Why did she tell me Chris was gone if she knew he wasn't? I pulled the box closer and flipped through the stack of documents inside. There were hospital records with Chris's name on them, pages stamped with dates that went back months. My eyes widened as I scanned them, treatments, medical bills, notes about transfers to different facilities. One record caught my eye. Patient transferred under private request. Access restricted. My chest tightened. Evelyn's name was scribbled at the bottom as the emergency contact. Not me. Not his wife of 40 years. Evelyn. I felt anger boiling in my veins. She had taken control of his care. She had cut me out. Why? I kept digging. There were bank statements showing large withdrawals from Chris's retirement fund. Thousands of dollars disappearing every few weeks. And then letters. Letters I had never seen before. Some were from lawyers, some from medical staff. All addressed to Chris. but every envelope had been opened already. By her. The last thing in the chest was a small black notebook. My heart raced as I opened it, flipping through page after page of Chris's handwriting. His notes, his fears, his suspicions. Evelyn is controlling everything. I don't trust her. She says Kill needs money, but where is it going? She is hiding something. If Paula ever sees this, please protect yourself. Do not let her fool you. The words blurred as my tears spilled over. Chris had been trying to warn me. He had known Evelyn was dangerous. And now he was gone, or at least hidden from me. The attic seemed to close in around me. My breathing grew shallow. For a moment, I thought I might faint. But then the anger steadied me. No, I couldn't collapse. Not now. Chris needed me. I stuffed the photo, the notebook, and a handful of the documents into my purse, then shoved the chest back into place. The flashlight beam caught on the dusty window, and I caught my reflection. An old woman, yes, but one with fire in her eyes. Evelyn thought she could fool me, silence me, break me. But she didn't know how strong I could be. When I climbed down from the attic, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Now you see. Be careful. She is watching. My blood ran cold. Whoever was sending these knew exactly what I had found. Were they here? In the house? I locked every door and window before sitting at the kitchen table with the notebook. I read through every page, every line Chris had written. The more I read, the more I realized he had been living in fear for months. He wrote about overhearing Evelyn on the phone with strangers, talking about closing deals and moving assets. He mentioned being kept in facilities far from home, always under Evelyn's control. And then the last entry. If Paula doesn't know by now, she must learn the truth another way. I don't know if I will make it out, but I need her to fight. I pressed the notebook to my chest. I'll fight for you, Chris, I whispered into the empty kitchen. I promise. The next day, I acted like everything was normal. Evelyn called to check in, her voice too sugary, too sweet. How are you, Mom? Did you sleep okay? Yes, I lied. Thank you for asking. Well, I was thinking, she continued smoothly, maybe it's time we look into selling your house. It's too big for you now, don't you think? My fingers clenched around the phone. She wanted my home now, too. I'm not ready for that, I said firmly. She laughed lightly. Of course. Just a thought. When she hung up, I sat back in my chair, fury bubbling inside me. She wasn't wasting any time. I knew I couldn't do this alone. That evening, I invited Beatrice over again. I laid everything out on the table. The photo, the notebook, the documents. Her hands flew to her mouth as she flipped through them. Paula, she whispered, this is huge. If Chris is alive, Evelyn has been lying to all of us. She's hiding him. I know, I said, my voice shaking. But why? And how do I find him? Beatrice leaned closer. You need help. Not just me. Someone who knows how to deal with this. A lawyer, maybe. Or the police. I shook my head quickly. Not yet. What if they don't believe me? What if Evelyn finds out before I'm ready? She has too much control, B. Too much. Beatrice's eyes softened. Then what will you do? I looked down at the notebook, running my fingers over Chris's handwriting. I'll follow the clues he left. If he trusted me to find the truth, then that's what I'll do. For a few days, I stayed quiet, studying the documents, retracing dates and addresses. I found names of hospitals, but when I called, the staff said Chris was no longer a patient. Every trail was cold. It felt like chasing a ghost. Until one night, another message arrived. He is close. Watch the old barn outside town. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. The barn? It had been abandoned for years, a crumbling structure near the edge of the woods. Why would Chris be there? Why would anyone hide him in such a place? I knew I should wait, gather courage, maybe even tell Beatrice. But Micah told me I couldn't waste time. If Chris was there, I had to see him with my own eyes. I grabbed my coat, my purse heavy with documents, and drove into the night. The road twisted through dark fields, the moon glowing faintly above. My headlights finally caught the outline of the barn, looming like a shadow against the trees. I parked a distance away and crept closer, my footsteps crunching on the gravel. My breath puffed in the cold air. The barn door was slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. I pushed it open slowly, the rusty hinges groaning. The smell of hay and dust filled my nose. "Chris," I whispered. My voice trembled. "Chris, are you here?" The silence was deafening. My flashlight beam darted across the barn, landing on piles of broken wood, rusted tools, and old hay bales. Then I saw it. On the ground near the center of the barn. A blanket. A pillow. An empty water bottle. Someone had been living here recently. I stepped closer, my heart thundering in my chest. I reached down and picked up the blanket. It smelled faintly of Chris's aftershave, the same scent I'd known for decades. Tears blurred my vision. "Oh God, Chris." But before I could take another step, I heard it. Footsteps behind me. I spun around, the flashlight shaking wildly in my hand. And there, standing in the doorway of the barn, was Evelyn, her face shadowed, her eyes glinting with something dark and dangerous. "You just couldn't listen, could you?" The barn door slammed shut behind Evelyn, the sound echoing through the hollow space like a gunshot. My hands tightened around the flashlight, its weak beam trembling as much as my own body. Evelyn stood there, her figure cutting through the dark, her eyes fixed on me like a predator cornering prey. "You just couldn't listen, could you, Paula?" she said softly, almost tenderly. But her tone carried a sharpness that made my skin crawl. "Always snooping. Always pushing where you don't belong." I swallowed hard, forcing my trembling lips to move. "Where's Chris?" Her smile curled, cold and unkind. "Chris." She tilted her head, mocking confusion. "Oh, Mom, Chris is gone. You were at the funeral, weren't you? You saw the coffin." My voice cracked. "Don't lie to me. I've seen the photo. He's alive. You've been hiding him." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, her mask slipped. I saw the flash of panic before she smoothed it over with another false smile. "You really should stop digging," she whispered. "It's dangerous for someone like you. Old. Fragile." Her words stung like poison. I took a step back, my flashlight beam bouncing off the broken beams of the barn. My heart pounded, so hard I thought it might burst. "I won't stop," I said firmly, surprising even myself with the strength in my voice. "Chris is my husband. If he's alive, I will find him." For a moment, Evelyn's expression hardened, and I thought she might strike me right there. Instead, she took a slow step forward, her heels crunching on the hay-strewn floor. "You've made a mistake," she hissed, "and mistakes have consequences." Before I could react, she snatched the flashlight out of my hands and slammed it against the floor. The beam died instantly, plunging us into near darkness. Only the pale moonlight from a crack in the barn roof lit her face, twisted and sinister. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a pile of wood. "Stay away from me." Evelyn laughed softly, the sound chilling in the hollow barn. "Don't worry, Mom. I won't hurt you, not tonight. But you need to understand, you don't control this story anymore. I do." With that, she turned and slipped out the barn door, leaving me shaking in the dark. I stood frozen, my breath ragged, my knees weak. When I finally gathered enough courage, I fled back to my car, slamming the doors shut and locking them as if Evelyn might leap out of the shadows. On the drive home, tears streamed down my face. Fear and fury churned inside me. She knew. She knew I was close to the truth. And now, she wanted to scare me into silence. But she had underestimated me. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table with Chris's notebook spread before me. My hands traced the handwriting, steadying myself with the thought of him. Evelyn thought she was clever, but Chris had left me the pieces. If I could put them together, maybe I could find him before it was too late. Beatrice stopped by the next morning, carrying a basket of muffins. One look at me and she knew something was wrong. "Paula, you look pale as a ghost. What happened?" I told her everything. About the barn, about Evelyn, about her threats. Beatrice's face grew pale, her hands trembling as she clutched the basket. "This is worse than I thought," she whispered. "She's dangerous. Paula, you can't face her alone." "I don't have a choice," I said. "Chris is out there. I can feel it. And Evelyn is hiding him. If I don't act, who will?" Beatrice shook her head. "At least let me help. We'll figure this out together." Her words comforted me. For a moment, I felt less alone. We spent hours poring over the documents I'd taken from the attic. Beatrice pointed out inconsistencies in the bank records, highlighting strange transfers to accounts with unfamiliar names. "Look here," she said, tapping one paper. "This money, it's being funneled somewhere. Not to kill, not to bills, somewhere else." I frowned, thinking hard. So Evelyn's using Chris's money. But for what? Beatrice bit her lip. What if she's paying someone to keep him hidden? The idea chilled me. It made sense. The hospital records, the private transfers, the secrecy. Evelyn wasn't just hiding Chris. She was controlling his very existence. That night, alone in my bed, I prayed. "Lord, give me strength. Give me courage. Help me find him." My tears soaked the pillow, but beneath the sorrow a new fire burned. I wasn't done fighting. 2 days later, another message arrived on my phone. "She knows you went to the barn. Be careful. Trust Beatrice. Next clue is hidden in Chris's study. Look under the desk." My breath caught. Chris's study had been locked since his death. Evelyn had the key. But I remembered Chris once told me he kept a spare hidden in the base of the grandfather clock in the hallway. With trembling hands, I opened the clock and found the small brass key taped inside. My heart pounded as I unlocked the study door and stepped inside. The room smelled of dust and leather, the way Chris had left it. His desk sat in the corner, neat but worn, the wood polished from years of use. I knelt down, running my fingers under the drawer, and felt a small bump. A latch. I pressed it, and a secret compartment slid open. Inside was a USB drive taped to the wood. I pulled it out, my hand shaking. When I plugged it into my old laptop, dozens of files appeared. Documents, recordings, photos. My eyes widened as I clicked through them. Chris had been collecting evidence against Evelyn. There were voice recordings of phone calls. Evelyn's voice, sharp and businesslike. "Yes, transfer it now." "No, she doesn't know anything. He's under control. Just make sure no one finds out." There were scanned documents of forged signatures, my name, signed on bank papers I had never seen. And then a video file. My hands trembled as I clicked play. Chris appeared on the screen. Thin, pale, in a hospital bed. His voice weak but clear. "Paula, if you're seeing this, it means she's kept you in the dark. Evelyn is lying. She's controlling everything. I don't know how much time I have, but please, don't trust her. Find me. I'm still alive." The video froze, my husband's face staring back at me. My sobs echoed through the study as I covered my mouth, afraid the neighbors might hear. Chris was alive. He had left proof. And Evelyn was at the center of it all. I was still shaking when headlights swept across my living room window. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. A car had pulled into my driveway. Through the curtain, I saw her. Evelyn. She was getting out of the car, her face shadowed, but in her hand, she carried something metallic. The headlights had barely faded before my blood ran cold. Through the thin curtain, I saw Evelyn step out of her car, the metallic gleam of the crowbar catching the porch light. She moved with purpose, her posture stiff, her face set like stone. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet refused to move. I stood frozen in the middle of the study, my laptop still open, Chris's weak but living face frozen on the screen. She was coming for me. The sharp thud of her heels echoed on the porch boards, followed by the slow creak of my front steps. I quickly snapped the laptop shut and grabbed the USB drive, shoving it into my pocket. My chest heaved as I searched for a place to hide. The doorknob rattled. Then a heavy bang. "Paula," Evelyn called, her voice sickly sweet, almost mocking. "It's me. Why don't you let me in? We should talk." Bang! The crowbar struck the door again. Panic surged through me. I darted to the phone, my hands trembling as I dialed 911. The operator answered, but before I could explain, the front door gave way with a deafening crack. The wood splintered, the hinges screamed, and Evelyn stepped inside, the crowbar dangling loosely in her hand. "Hello, Mom," she said smoothly, her eyes glinting. "We need to have a little chat." I dropped the phone onto the couch cushions, the operator's voice still faintly buzzing through. My hands gripped the edge of the kitchen counter as I backed away. Stay away from me, Evelyn. Please. Her smile widened. Oh, Paula. Always so dramatic. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want what's mine. What are you talking about? My voice cracked. Her eyes flicked toward the study door. The files. The little secrets Chris left behind. You've been digging where you don't belong. I shook my head quickly. I don't know what you mean. Don't play dumb with me, she snapped, her mask slipping for just a moment. I know you've been snooping. At the barn. In his study. You think you're clever, but you're not. Hand it over. The crowbar glinted as she tightened her grip. My knees trembled, but I forced myself to stand taller. You'll never get away with this, Evelyn. I know the truth now. Chris is alive. For a brief second, something flickered in her eyes, fear. But she quickly covered it with a cold laugh. Alive? Oh, Paula. Grief does strange things to the mind. You buried him, remember? You saw the coffin. My heart pounded. She was gaslighting me, twisting my reality. But the photo, the notebook, the video, I knew better. Before I could respond, flashing lights appeared outside. Red and blue strobes cut through the curtains, filling the living room. Evelyn stiffened. The police. The 911 call had gone through after all. 2 officers stormed in, their hands hovering near their holsters. Ma'am, drop the weapon, one shouted. For the first time, Evelyn's confident mask faltered. She hesitated, glancing between me and the officers. Then, with a clatter, she let the crowbar fall to the floor. I gasped, my body collapsing into the nearest chair. Relief washed over me, but only for a moment. Evelyn wasn't finished. The officers cuffed her, reading her rights as they led her out. She looked back at me, her eyes burning with hatred. This isn't over, Mom, she hissed. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life. The door slammed behind them, and the night grew quiet again. Hours later, I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of untouched tea cooling beside me. My hands still trembled, my heart refusing to slow down. Beatrice arrived just after dawn, her face drawn with worry. I came as soon as I heard, she said, pulling me into a hug. Are you all right? I'm alive, I whispered. But Evelyn, she knows everything. Beatrice sat across from me, her eyes scanning the mess of papers and Chris's notebook on the table. Maybe now the police can handle her. I shook my head. No, she's clever. She'll twist this, make herself look innocent. She'll say she was worried about me, that I imagined the whole thing. Without proof, they'll let her go. Beatrice's eyes softened. You have proof, Paula. You have the video. The documents. That's more than enough. Maybe, I murmured. But I still don't know where Chris is. And until I find him, none of this will be over. We sat in silence for a long while, the weight of it all pressing down on us. I thought about Chris's weak voice in the video, his plea for me to find him. I couldn't let him down. That afternoon, I returned to the study and dug deeper into the USB drive. Among the files, I found a folder labeled Final Insurance. Inside were scanned documents with Evelyn's name all over them, policies, claims, signatures. My stomach churned. She wasn't just stealing money. She was planning for Chris's death to be permanent, tying up every financial thread in her favor. But one document stood out. A transfer order from a private medical facility in Cincinnati, Ohio. The date was only 2 weeks before Chris's supposed death. The signature authorizing the transfer? Evelyn's. My heart raced. Cincinnati. A new trail. I printed the documents, tucking them into my purse. Tomorrow I would go there myself. That night, I sat by the window, watching the moonlight spill across the yard. I thought about kindness, about how I had tried to show it to Evelyn all those years. I cooked for her, cared for her, treated her like family. And yet, she had repaid me with lies and betrayal. But I also thought about Chris. His laughter, his patience, his steady love. The way he always said, Paula, kindness is never wasted. Even when it hurts, it makes you stronger. Those words gave me courage. I was dozing in my chair when a sudden crash jolted me awake. Glass shattered in the back of the house. My heart leapt into my throat. I grabbed a lamp and crept toward the kitchen, my feet silent on the floorboards. My breath caught as I saw the window smashed open, shards glittering on the floor. And there, standing in the shadows of my kitchen, was Evelyn. Her hair was wild, her face twisted with rage. She had escaped. And this time she wasn't empty-handed. In her grip was a knife. The knife glinted under the dim kitchen light, and my breath caught in my throat. Evelyn's eyes were wide, feverish, and her lips curled into a twisted grin. "You just don't know when to stop, do you, Paula?" she hissed, stepping closer, shards of broken glass crunching under her heels. My body shook, but I forced myself to stand taller, clutching the lamp in my trembling hands. "Please, Evelyn, you don't want to do this." She tilted her head, her expression almost pitying. "Oh, but I do. You should have stayed out of it. You should have just buried Chris and moved on. But no, you had to dig, you had to snoop, you had to ruin everything I worked for." Her voice rose with every word until it was nearly a scream. The knife flashed as she lifted it higher. Adrenaline surged through me. Without thinking, I swung the lamp. It smashed against her shoulder, and she cried out, stumbling back against the counter. The knife clattered to the floor. I didn't wait. I bolted for the front door, my bare feet slapping against the hardwood. My heart thundered as I fumbled with the lock, yanking the door open. Cold night air hit my face as I ran onto the porch, screaming for help. The neighbors' lights flicked on one by one, but before anyone could step outside, Evelyn lunged from behind, tackling me to the ground. We tumbled down the steps together, my bones aching from the impact. She scrambled for the knife, but I kicked it away, sending it skidding into the flower beds. Her hands wrapped around my throat. Her grip was iron, her face twisted in fury. I gasped for air, my vision darkening. My nails clawed at her arms, but she didn't budge. Then, suddenly, sirens. The wail grew louder, closer, until red and blue lights lit up the street. Evelyn froze, her eyes widening like a trapped animal. She released me and tried to run, but it was too late. Officers swarmed the yard, dragging her off me as I coughed and gasped for breath. The knife was recovered, bagged, and Evelyn was shoved into the back of a squad car, thrashing and screaming like a madwoman. "This isn't over, Paula," she howled as the car pulled away. "You'll regret this." The streets slowly emptied, neighbors retreating back inside, officers filing reports. I sat on the porch steps, clutching a blanket one of them had draped over me, my body trembling uncontrollably. The adrenaline left me hollow, but a single thought burned bright in my mind. I had to find Chris before Evelyn found a way back to him. By morning, I was exhausted but determined. Beatrice arrived with a strong pot of coffee, her face pale from the news. "They said she broke out of holding once," she whispered. "What if she does it again?" "She will," I said grimly. "And next time, she won't come alone. She has people helping her." That's how Chris ended up in this mess to begin with. Beatrice set her cup down, her eyes narrowing. "Then we move fast. You said something about Cincinnati." I nodded, pulling out the printed transfer order. A private medical facility. Chris was moved there just before his supposed death. "If I can track that down, I'll find him." "But what if it's a trap?" she asked softly. "Then at least I'll know," I whispered. We spent the afternoon digging through records, making calls, and cross-referencing addresses. Finally, after hours of dead ends, one address kept surfacing. St. Helena Recovery Center, just outside Cincinnati, Ohio. The name sounded innocent enough, but my gut told me it was the place. "I'll go tomorrow," I told Beatrice. "You're not going alone," she shot back firmly. "I'm coming with you." For the first time in days, I almost smiled. "You've always had more courage than me." "No," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "You've just spent your whole life giving kindness where it wasn't deserved. Now it's time you take some back." Her words touched me, reminding me of something Chris used to say. "Kindness is armor, Paula. It won't stop the blows, but it makes you stronger to stand again." I held on to that as we packed for the trip. The drive to Ohio the next day was long and tense. Every car that pulled too close behind us made me flinch. Every rest stop felt like a risk. Evelyn had people, she could be anywhere. By the time we reached the outskirts of Cincinnati, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. St. Helena Recovery Center loomed ahead, a sprawling brick building surrounded by tall fences and guarded gates. Beatrice parked a block away, and we sat in silence for a moment, staring at it. "This is it," I whispered. She nodded. "Now what?" I pulled out Chris's notebook, flipping to the coded entries. If the dates line up, he was here. He has to be. We slipped closer, keeping to the shadows, my pulse quickening as we neared the gates. A guard passed by, his flashlight sweeping over the lawn. We ducked behind a tree, holding our breath. When he was gone, I crept closer to a side fence, noticing a small maintenance shed just beyond it. My instinct screamed that Chris was inside this facility, that he was being hidden in plain sight. Suddenly, a sound cut through the quiet night. A voice, faint but clear. "Paula." I froze, my heart stopping. It was his voice. Chris's voice. Beatrice's eyes widened. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "He's here." But before we could move closer, headlights swept across the street. A black SUV pulled up near the facility, its windows tinted dark. The back door opened, and even in the dim light, I saw her. Evelyn. She stepped out calmly, her hair neatly tied back, her face unreadable. Flanked by two men in suits, she walked straight into the facility as if she owned it. My blood ran cold. She wasn't locked away anymore. She was here. And if she was here, then Chris's life was in even greater danger than I ever. The sound of Chris's voice still rang in my ears as Evelyn disappeared into the facility with those two men. My breath came shallow, my fingers clutching Beatrice's arm so tightly she winced. "He's here," I whispered, my chest aching with equal parts fear and hope. "Beatrice," I heard him. "He's alive." Beatrice's eyes darted toward the towering brick walls of the recovery center. And Evelyn just walked in there like she owns the place. "That's not good, Paula. That's not good at all." I swallowed hard, staring at the gates. "We can't just sit here. We have to get in." "Are you out of your mind?" Beatrice hissed. "That place is crawling with guards. We'll be arrested before we even set foot inside." "I don't care," I shot back. "If Chris is in there, I'm not leaving without him." Beatrice sighed, her shoulders sagging. "Then we need a plan. A smart one. Not just rushing in blind." Her practicality steadied me. We pulled back toward the car and huddled inside, whispering like conspirators. My hand shook as I unfolded Chris's notebook again, scanning the coded entries. "Look here," I said, pointing to a string of dates. "These match up with transfers. And this one," I tapped a line near the bottom. "It matches the date on the transfer form I found. Cincinnati. St. Helena." Beatrice leaned closer. "And that word scribbled next to it, West Wing. That has to mean something." We exchanged a look, the weight of realization pressing on both of us. Chris wasn't just inside. He was in the West Wing of the facility. We waited until near midnight, when the traffic outside had thinned and the guards looked more relaxed in their patrols. Using the shadows of the trees, we crept to the side fence. My knees ached, my body protesting every movement, but adrenaline pushed me forward. Beatrice pulled a pair of wire cutters from her bag. I stared at her, startled. "What?" she whispered. "You think I came unprepared?" Despite the fear, a small smile tugged at my lips. That was Beatrice, always the one to carry the practical tools. She snipped through a section of chain link, and we slipped inside. My heart pounded as we hurried toward the small maintenance shed I had spotted earlier. The metal door creaked softly as I pulled it open, and we slipped inside just as a guard's flashlight swept across the yard. We held our breath, pressed against the wall until the beam passed. Only then did I let out a shaky sigh. Inside the shed, shelves of cleaning supplies and tools lined the walls. But it wasn't the supplies that caught my eye. It was the folder left carelessly on the workbench. I picked it up, flipping it open. Inside were patient transfer forms, invoices, and medical notes. My hands trembled as I scanned the names. Most were strangers. But then, Christopher Hill. My heart stopped. There it was. His name, his date of birth, his signature. The document showed he had been admitted to St. Helena under special supervision. I clutched the papers to my chest, tears welling in my eyes. "Beatrice, it's him. This is real. He's here. Beatrice's hand squeezed my shoulder, grounding me. Then we know where to look. The West Wing. We slipped back outside, hugging the shadows as we approached the massive brick structure. A single side door stood slightly ajar, likely left open by a careless staff member. With one last look at each other, we slipped inside. The hallways were dim and sterile, the smell of antiseptic heavy in the air. Our footsteps were muffled on the linoleum, every sound amplified by the silence. We crept past closed doors, each marked with numbers, the occasional groan or cough seeping through. As we neared the West Wing, my pulse quickened. I could almost feel Chris on the other side of the walls, as if my soul was pulling me toward him. Then, from down the corridor, a door opened. We froze, ducking behind a cart of linens as a nurse stepped out, scribbling on a clipboard. She hummed to herself, oblivious, before pushing the cart past us. We slipped further down, turning a corner, and that's when we saw it. A large door marked West Wing, authorized personnel only. My breath caught. This was it. I reached for the handle, but before I could push it open, a voice rang out behind us. Well, well, well. Look what we have here. I spun, my stomach dropping. Evelyn stood at the end of the hall, her arms crossed, her lips curled in a cruel smile. The two men who had arrived with her earlier flanked her, both of them broad and intimidating. How did I know you wouldn't be able to resist snooping, Mom? She sneered. You've always been too curious for your own good. Beatrice stepped in front of me, her chin high. Leave her alone, Evelyn. You've done enough damage. Evelyn laughed, the sound echoing off the sterile walls. Damage? Oh, Beatrice, you have no idea. You think you're rescuing Chris? You're walking right into the lion's den. My grip tightened on the papers in my hands. Where is he? What have you done to him? Her eyes glittered. You'll see soon enough. She gestured to the men. Take them. The two men stepped forward, their boots heavy against the floor. I clutched Beatrice's arm, my heart hammering. We had walked straight into her trap. For the first time since this nightmare began, I realized Evelyn wasn't just scheming for money. She was dangerous, organized, and one step ahead of us. And now, with Chris's life hanging in the balance, she had us exactly where she... The men grabbed us before I could react. One clamped his meaty hands around my arms, the other shoved Beatrice forward, her small frame stumbling against the linoleum. Let go of me, I cried, thrashing against his grip. But it was useless, his strength dwarfed mine. Evelyn followed casually, her heels clicking against the floor, her hands folded neatly in front of her, as if she were escorting honored guests rather than prisoners. You see, Paula, she said smoothly, you've misunderstood everything. You think Chris is some poor victim. But the truth is much more complicated. Beatrice spat at the floor. All you care about is money. Don't act like you're some noble mastermind. Evelyn smirked. Money is part of it, yes. But power? Control? That's what really matters. We were marched through the hallways, past dimly lit rooms and half-shut doors. Patients' groans echoed in the silence, mixing with the squeak of our shoes. My chest tightened with dread as we neared the West Wing door. One of the men swiped a card, and the lock clicked. The door swung open, revealing a long corridor lined with reinforced doors, each with a small square window. A cold chill swept over me, making my skin prickle. They dragged us into a room halfway down the hall. It was small, clinical, just a table, 2 chairs, and a camera mounted in the corner. They shoved us inside and locked the door behind us. Evelyn strolled in last, pulling the door shut with a sharp click. She leaned against the table, her smile unnervingly calm. You want to see Chris? She asked softly. You'll get your wish, but not the way you think. I gripped the edge of the chair to steady myself. Where is he, Evelyn? What have you done to him? She tilted her head, as if amused by my desperation. Chris isn't dead. You already know that. But what you don't know is why he had to disappear. Beatrice folded her arms. Because you forced him to. Because you needed him out of the way for your schemes. Evelyn's laugh was sharp. Oh, Beatrice, you always were so black and white. No, it wasn't just me. Chris had debts. Dangerous ones. People who wanted him gone. I saved him. Or at least I gave him an option. Her words slammed into me like a punch. Debts? Dangerous people? Chris had never told me anything like that. You're lying, I whispered. Am I? Evelyn's eyes glittered. Think, Paula. All those nights he came home late. All those phone calls he wouldn't explain. Did you really believe he was just working late? He was in over his head, and when the time came, I offered him a way out. But it required sacrifice, a fake death, a clean slate, and me controlling the pieces. My mind reeled. I wanted to reject it, to scream that she was twisting the truth. But part of me remembered those nights, Chris's tired eyes, his vague excuses. Still, I shook my head violently. No, Chris wouldn't agree to this. He wouldn't leave me like that. Not unless you forced him. Evelyn's smile faltered, and her voice hardened. Believe what you want. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're a liability. You've seen too much, and I can't have you running around with your proof. She nodded toward the camera in the corner. The men watching this? They don't answer to you or even me. They answer to people who make me look like a saint. And those people don't want Chris found. A chill spread through me, deeper than anything I'd felt before. This wasn't just Evelyn. There were others, bigger, more dangerous players in the shadows. Beatrice slammed her hand on the table. You're insane if you think we're just going to sit here and let you get away with this. Evelyn chuckled. You don't really have a choice. She pushed away from the table, straightening her blazer. But don't worry, Paula. I'll take good care of Chris. Better than you ever did. That last jab cut deep, sharper than any knife. Before I could respond, the door swung open. One of the men stepped inside, murmured something to Evelyn, and handed her a phone. She listened intently for a moment, then her expression shifted. Understood, she said coldly. She slipped the phone into her pocket and turned to us. Change of plans. They don't want you held here. They want you gone. My stomach dropped. Gone? What do you mean? But I already knew. Evelyn smiled faintly, almost kindly. Goodbye, Mom. The man grabbed my arm again, yanking me to my feet. Beatrice struggled against the other one, kicking and clawing, but it was useless. They dragged us out of the room, down the hall, toward a side exit. Cold night air hit my face as the door slammed open. We were shoved toward the waiting SUV, its engine purring in the shadows. My pulse hammered, panic clawing at my chest. This was it. They were going to make us vanish, just like Chris. But just as they shoved me closer to the vehicle, I caught it. Faint but unmistakable. Paula, Chris's voice again, drifting from one of the rooms in the West Wing. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. He was here. He was alive. I twisted, screaming with all the strength left in me. Chris, I hear you. Hold on. The men cursed, trying to shove me forward, but my shout had already drawn attention. Lights flicked on inside the facility. Alarms began to blare, and confusion rippled through the quiet night. Evelyn's eyes blazed with fury. She hadn't planned for this chaos. In that moment, I realized something vital. Evelyn wasn't as untouchable as she wanted me to believe. But before hope could fully form, the man shoved me hard into the SUV, slamming the door shut. Beatrice was forced in beside me, her lip bleeding, her eyes wide with terror. The vehicle lurched forward, speeding away from the facility, leaving Chris's desperate voice echoing in my ears. And I knew with chilling certainty that Evelyn's change of plans meant only one thing. She wasn't planning to keep us alive much longer. The SUV roared down the deserted highway, its headlights cutting a narrow path through the darkness. My wrists ached from the zip ties binding them, and every bump in the road sent me crashing against the cold leather seat. Beside me, Beatrice sat rigid, her lip bleeding, her eyes burning with fear and fury. In the front, the two men spoke in low voices, their words drowned out by the hum of the engine. Evelyn wasn't with us. That alone made my stomach twist. She wasn't dirtying her hands. She had handed us off like packages, leaving her goons to finish the job. I leaned close to Beatrice, whispering through clenched teeth. We can't just sit here. They're going to kill us. Her jaw tightened. I know. Then we fight. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp and determined. What's the plan? I scanned the SUV. The locks were automatic, the windows tinted. But in the side pocket of the seat in front of me, a small metal object caught my eye. A pen. left behind carelessly. I shifted, stretching my fingers as far as they would go, straining against the ties. My knuckles scraped, my nails bent painfully, but finally I hooked the pen with the tips of my fingers and dragged it toward me. I shoved it into Beatrice's hand. Cut me loose. She didn't hesitate. Awkwardly, she maneuvered the pen against the zip tie biting into my wrist. It took agonizing minutes, the plastic digging deeper into my skin, but finally, with a sharp snap, the tie broke. I yanked my hands free, the skin raw and burning. Quickly, I worked on Beatrice's bonds until she too was free. Now came the hard part. We wait for the right moment, I whispered. When they stop or slow down. Beatrice nodded grimly, but luck, it seemed, was already shifting in our favor. Up ahead, a red light glowed faintly. The SUV began to slow. I tensed, my heart hammering. Now, with a sudden surge, I lunged forward, grabbing the driver's headrest and yanking hard. The man cursed, swerving violently. Beatrice kicked the back of the passenger's seat with all her strength, her heel connecting with his shoulder. The SUV fishtailed, tires screeching. Horns blared as another car swerved to avoid us. The driver tried to regain control, but I slammed my elbow into his temple. The vehicle jerked violently, then careened off the road, crashing through a ditch and slamming to a halt against a tree. Airbags exploded, filling the cabin with white powder. My ears rang, my chest heaved, but I forced myself to move. Beatrice out. I gasped, shoving the door open. We tumbled into the night, stumbling across the ditch and into the cover of the trees. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't stop until we were deep in the woods, the SUV a faint glow behind us. We collapsed against a fallen log, gasping for air. We did it, Beatrice wheezed. For now, I panted. But they'll come after us. We need to keep moving. We stumbled through the woods for hours, guided only by the faint glow of the moon. My body ached, my throat dry, but fear kept me going. Every snap of a twig behind us felt like footsteps, every shadow a pursuer. At dawn, we reached a gas station on the edge of town. The smell of gasoline and coffee hit me like a lifeline. We staggered inside, drawing wary glances from the clerk. Please, I croaked, we need help. The clerk, a young man with messy hair, handed us bottles of water and let us use the payphone. My hand shook as I dialed the only number I trusted, Detective Marshall, an old friend of Chris's who had once helped us with a break-in years ago. When his voice came through the line, deep and steady, I nearly broke down. Marshall, it's Paula. I don't have time to explain everything, but Chris is alive. He's being held at St. Helena Recovery in Cincinnati. And Evelyn, she's behind it. There was silence on the other end. Then, Paula, do you know what you're saying? Yes, I hissed. I have proof, but I need your help. Please. He exhaled slowly. All right. Don't go back there alone. Find a safe place. I'll meet you tonight. Relief washed through me. Someone was on our side. Someone who believed me. That afternoon, Beatrice and I holed up in a cheap motel outside town. The curtains were drawn, the doors double-locked. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to breathe, to sip a cup of weak coffee, and close my eyes for just a moment. But rest didn't bring peace. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evelyn's face, heard Chris's weak voice calling my name. When night fell, Marshall arrived. His presence filled the small motel room. Tall and broad-shouldered, his graying hair cropped short. He listened carefully as I laid out everything. The notebook, the transfer order, the video of Chris, the facility. When I finished, his expression was grave. If this is true, Paula, it's bigger than just Evelyn. That facility, St. Helena, it's been whispered about before. Off-the-books patients, shady transfers. But no one's ever been able to pin anything down. My hands trembled around my coffee cup. Then we pin it now. We get Chris out. Marshall nodded. I'll pull some strings. We'll go in tomorrow, quiet. But Paula, you need to be prepared. If what you're saying is true, Evelyn won't let this end without blood. His warning sat heavy on my chest. Later that night, as Beatrice slept fitfully, I stepped outside to breathe. The air was cool, the stars faint above the buzzing motel sign. For the first time, hope flickered in me. Chris was close. Tomorrow, we might finally see him again. But then, a phone rang. Not mine. Not Beatrice's. It came from the payphone near the motel office. At this hour, it felt wrong. Too deliberate. Curiosity pulled me closer. The phone rang again, sharp and insistent. My hand shook as I lifted the receiver. Hello. A pause. Then a voice I knew too well. Paula. My blood froze. It was Chris. Paula, listen to me. His voice rasped, weak and urgent. Don't trust anyone. Not the police, not your friends. Evelyn isn't the only danger. They'll. Static swallowed the rest. Then the line went dead. I stood frozen, the receiver pressed to my ear, my heart pounding like a drum. Chris had found a way to reach me, but his warning was clear. If I couldn't trust anyone, then maybe Marshall's help wasn't the blessing I thought it was. The phone call from Chris kept rolling in my head. His voice had sounded scared. He had said, don't trust anyone. Those words felt like cold water on my face. I started to doubt everyone I had turned to for help. Detective Marshall had seemed kind. He had listened. He had promised to help. But now I worried. What if he was not what he seemed? What if he was part of the dark web of people who had taken Chris? The thought made my stomach twist. That night I hardly slept. I sat by the motel window and watched the road. Beatrice slept in the bed behind me. She snored softly, tired from the crash and the run. I did not want to wake her, but I could not rest. At dawn I told Beatrice what had happened at the payphone. She sat up and held my hand. Maybe Chris was too scared to say more, she said. Maybe he cut off. The line went bad. That happens. Maybe, I answered, but my mind would not stop. If Chris said not to trust anyone, I had to check. I had to be sure. That was what he wanted. That was what I promised him. Detective Marshall arrived around noon. He wore a plain coat and a tired face. He hugged me like a friend. He had brought files and a small map of the facility. He spoke in small, strong sentences. He had a quiet voice that made me feel safer. I made a few calls, he said. I want to go tonight. We'll go in quiet. We'll pull him out. His eyes looked steady. I wanted to believe him. We packed our things. Beatrice and I followed Marshall to his car. It was an old sedan with scratches on the bumper. Marshall drove slowly and talked about plans. He said he had officers ready to back us. He said he had important friends who would help. As we drove, I watched Marshall. I watched the way he gripped the wheel. I watched his hands. I watched his face when he did not know I was looking. I tried to listen to my feelings. My heart still beat fast. At a red light, Marshall reached into the glove box. He pulled out a paper and slid it across to me. Keep this, he said. It is a warrant. Signed. We can use it if they try to stop us. I took the paper. The signature looked real, but a small part of me, tiny and stubborn, would not calm down. When we stopped for coffee, I saw Marshall make a short call. He spoke in hushed tones, his brow furrowed. Then he smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. He hung up. He said nothing about the call. The car ride felt long. The highway rolled under the wheels. Trees blurred past. I looked out the window and tried to think. I thought of Chris's hands and of his soft laugh. I thought of the letters in the attic. I thought of the voice in the video. I thought of Evelyn's cold smile. At the rest stop, Marshall stepped out. I walked slowly to the trunk to get the bag with the laptop. He closed the trunk and started walking back to the car. I stayed a moment. Curiosity squeezed me. I walked around the car. The back seat window was down a crack. I leaned closer. I did not mean to snoop, but my heart pulled me like a string. On the floor of the car, I saw something that made my throat go dry. A paper envelope tucked under the seat. It had a company name printed on it, St. Helena Medical Partners. Under that, a small note in handwriting I knew. Evelyn's handwriting. My hand shook. I slid the envelope out with slow fingers. Inside were folded papers and a receipt from a private clinic. The date on the receipt matched the transfer date on the documents I had found. It showed a payment. It showed a name. It showed an account number. My chest felt tight. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run to Marshall and throw the papers at him. But I also wanted proof. I slid the envelope back under the seat and walked away slowly. When I got back to the car, Marshall looked at me like he knew something. His smile was small. Ready, he asked. I nodded, but I could not speak. My mind ran like lightning. Why would Marshall have a letter from St. Helena with Evelyn's handwriting? Was he working with her? Had he taken money? Or had he been paid to help? Or was he setting a trap for me? So I would find the papers and be sure he was bad. We drove the rest of the way quiet. I kept my hands folded in my lap. My mind made plans and counterplans. I tried to tell myself not to panic. I had to be smart. I had to test him. When we reached Cincinnati, the city felt heavy. The sky was gray. St. Helena stood like a low wall with guards and lights. Marshall parked 2 blocks away. He opened his map and pointed to a staff entrance. This is where we go in, he whispered. Beatrice squeezed my hand and gave me a small, brave smile. She trusted Marshall. She needed to trust him too. I wanted to keep that trust safe. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted a simple truth. But the envelope haunted me like a small, ugly coin in my pocket. We walked to the staff door. A guard looked us up and down. Marshall showed the warrant paper and a badge. The guard frowned and radioed inside. We waited a long time with our hearts loud in our ears. A man in a plain jacket opened the door. He scanned the paper and then stepped aside. The guard's eyes flicked to Marshall's face. For a moment I thought he would stop us. Then he let us pass. Inside the West Wing the air smelled cold and chemical. Machines hummed. Doors clicked. We moved like mice. A nurse passed by and did not look at us. We kept our heads bowed. Marshall led us down a hallway. He pointed to a door. Room 17, he said. This is where a man called Patient Hill is listed. My heart went fast. This could be it. We were close. I felt excitement climb like a fever. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe Marshall was my friend. Marshall reached for the door and pushed. The door was locked. He tapped the handle. He turned to me. Stay here, he whispered. I'll get someone to open it. He walked away down the corridor. I wanted to follow. I wanted to pull him back and demand to see his pockets and his notes. I wanted to hold the envelope and show him. I wanted to shout and say, don't trust him. I waited, and then the world moved too fast. From the far end of the hall came shouts. Heavy feet. The sting of a radio call. A nurse stumbling out. Faces turned. A man in a suit burst through a doorway. He had a badge like the ones on Marshall's belt, except his badge was different. It shone sharp. Behind him 2 guards moved. One of them grabbed Marshall's arm. What? I started, but the man in the suit barked, Detective Marshall, you are under investigation for collusion with private contractors and falsifying records. You are to come with us. My mouth went dry. Marshall's face went white. He mouthed words I could not hear. Beatrice made a small sound of surprise. The man in the suit read out the charges. He said they had a warrant to question Marshall. He said there were new orders. Marshall looked at me like he had been stabbed. His mouth trembled. He tried to explain. Paula, I can, he did not finish. The man in the suit cuffed Marshall's hands behind his back. 2 guards led him away. He looked at me for 1 second, and then his face hardened like a mask falling into place. He did not look like the same man who had hugged me in a motel room. As the hallway grew quiet again, I felt something cold and raw in my chest. The envelope under the seat. The phone call. Chris's voice. The detective being led away like a criminal. Beatrice whispered, what happened? Is he one of them? I wanted to shout. I wanted to run after Marshall and grab his arm and demand answers. But the shape of the truth was changing under my feet, like ice melting. We stood there helpless. Then a nurse closed the door of room 17 and looked at us with apology and fear. We are sorry, she said. We can't let family in without proper verification. A small voice from inside the room called out. It was thin and far. Mom? Paula? My knees buckled. I stepped forward and banged on the door with both fists. Chris! I screamed. My voice broke like glass. The nurse tried to calm me. Ma'am, please, she said. But then the door slowly cracked open from the inside. Not with a kind hand, but with a gloved one. A man I did not know peered out. He looked tired. He looked like he had not slept in a long time. Paula, he said, as if he was both glad and afraid. You shouldn't be here. I looked past him. The room inside was small. A bed. A chair. A curtain pulled half across the bed, but I saw only a shadow behind the fabric. A hump of blankets. A faint movement. Is that? I could not finish. My throat closed. The unknown man stepped forward and pulled the curtain aside. And for a blink of a moment I saw a face I knew. Thin and sunken. But the eyes, my God, the eyes were his. Chris's eyes. They looked at me, filled with pain and fear and an urgent plea. "Paula," he whispered, barely loud enough to hear. I moved forward, but a firm hand stopped me. The unknown man said, "You can see him for a moment. Then you must leave." I leaned in. I cupped his hand like I had done 1,000 times. His skin was cold, but his grip was real. He mouthed words that I could not hear. Then he blinked and his eyes rolled back. Machines beeped faster. Nurses rushed in. The door closed. I staggered back. My world spun. I clutched Beatrice's arm, and then suddenly the lights flicked off. The emergency lights glowed red. A loud voice boomed from the corridor. "Lockdown. Everyone stay where you are." Metal gates began to fall. The intercom crackled. I felt something strike the back of my head. I sank down like a puppet whose strings had been cut. When I opened my eyes, I was in a small room, hands strapped to a chair. The door was locked. The lights were harsh and hot. Then the door opened, and Detective Marshall walked in. He smiled slowly, but his smile was not for me. It was for Evelyn. The straps dug into my wrists. The chair was cold metal, bolted to the floor. A harsh light above blinded me, but I could make out the two figures stepping into the room. Detective Marshall and Evelyn. They stood side by side like shadows stitched together, his bulk towering, her elegance sharp as a knife. Marshall no longer wore the mask of a friend. His eyes were flat, his mouth a tight smirk. Evelyn, on the other hand, looked like she was glowing. She had won, or at least she thought she had. "Well, well," she purred, her heels clicking as she stepped closer. "Paula, you always were too stubborn. I almost admire it. Almost." I glared at her, fighting the fear in my chest. "Where is Chris?" Her lips curled into a cruel smile. "Alive. For now. But really, darling, you should be thanking me. If it weren't for me, he'd be rotting in a grave already. I kept him alive. I fed the right people, paid the right men. I made sure his weak little body kept going." My blood boiled. "You locked him away like an animal." Marshall crossed his arms. "And you almost ruined it. Do you have any idea how much money was at stake? Do you know how many people are involved? Politicians, investors, hospitals." Evelyn was smart enough to play the game. Chris was worth more sick than dead. The words hit like a blow. My husband, my Chris, reduced to a profit margin. Evelyn tilted her head. "You're in over your head, Paula. But don't worry. You won't be a problem much longer." She glanced at Marshall. "Finish it." Marshall reached into his coat. I closed my eyes, bracing for the end. But then, a crash echoed down the hallway. Shouts, running footsteps. Evelyn's smile faltered. "What now?" The door burst open. Beatrice charged in, wild-eyed, holding a fire extinguisher like a battering ram. She swung it hard, slamming it into Marshall's shoulder. He stumbled back with a roar. "Paula!" Beatrice cried. She dropped the extinguisher and rushed to me, fumbling with the straps. My wrists burned as they came free. "Go," she yelled. Marshall lunged forward, but I shoved the chair into his path. He crashed to the floor, cursing. Evelyn screamed, her mask of calm shattering. We bolted into the hallway. Alarms blared. The whole facility was in chaos, guards rushing, nurses scattering, lights flashing red. "Chris," I gasped. "We have to find him." Beatrice nodded. "Room 17. We sprinted through the chaos, weaving between orderlies and shouting guards. My lungs burned, but my legs moved faster than they ever had. Every second mattered. At last we reached the door. Room 17. I shoved it open. Chris lay on the bed, hooked to machines, his face pale and thin, but his eyes, oh, his eyes, lit up when he saw me. "Paula." His voice was barely a whisper. Tears blurred my vision. "I'm here. I found you." Beatrice began yanking cords free while I held his hand. "We're getting you out of here." But the door slammed behind us. Evelyn. Her face was twisted with fury, her hands shaking. She held a small pistol, her knuckles white around it. "No one leaves," she hissed. "Not him. Not you. Do you know what I've sacrificed? Do you know what I've built? I won't let you ruin it." Chris squeezed my hand weakly. "Paula, don't let her win." Beatrice stepped in front of us, her chin raised. "You won't stop us, Evelyn." Evelyn laughed, high and broken. "You think you can save him? You think love is enough? Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't make men listen. Money does. Power does. That's what I've learned. That's what you'll never understand." I rose to my feet, standing between her and Chris. My voice shook, but I spoke anyway. "You're wrong. Power built on cruelty always collapses, and money can't keep you warm when you're alone. But love, real love, survives anything." Her hand wavered. For a flicker of a second, I thought she might break. But then she steadied, aiming straight at my chest. The shot rang out. Pain didn't come. Instead, Evelyn dropped the gun, her hand flying to her arm where a bullet had grazed her. Behind her stood Detective Marshall, but not the Marshall I had seen with her. His cuffs were gone, his face bloodied, but his eyes fierce. "I told you, Evelyn," he growled. "You weren't the only one with friends watching." Before she could recover, guards stormed the room, weapons raised. They tackled her to the ground as she screamed and thrashed, her voice cracking with rage. Marshall limped toward us. "Are you all right?" I stared at him, my mind spinning. You're not with her?" He shook his head. I was deep undercover. I had to make her believe I was. "I couldn't warn you, Paula, I'm sorry. But you gave me the proof I needed." He held up a recorder, its red light blinking. "Every word she said in that room, it's all here." My knees gave way. Relief crashed over me in waves. Chris was safe. Evelyn was finished. The weeks that followed blurred together. Evelyn was arrested, charged with fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. St. Helena was shut down, its secrets dragged into the light. The media called it the Cincinnati Scandal. Marshall testified, Beatrice too, and me. My words shook, but I told the truth. Every piece, every wound, every betrayal. Chris was moved to a real hospital where doctors treated him with care. It was a long road, but he began to heal. His smile returned, faint at first, then stronger. One evening, as I sat by his bedside, he squeezed my hand. "You saved me," he whispered. I smiled through tears. "No, we saved each other." Months later, when Chris was strong enough, we returned home. The house in Ohio felt different now, lighter, freer. Beatrice stayed with us often, her laughter filling the rooms. Evelyn's shadow was gone. I stood in the garden one morning, watching the sun rise, and thought of everything we had endured. Pain, betrayal, fear, and yet we had survived. Not because of money or power or cunning, but because of love, because of kindness, because even in the darkest nights, we had chosen to keep faith in each other. That was the revenge Evelyn never understood. Not just exposing her, not just tearing down her empire, but living, loving, and proving her wrong. Always,